of the hardest things to keep consistent is the part of the game that looks the simplest: the grass. The 2026 World Cup stretches across Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Some venues sit in hot, humid climates, while others are much farther north. Some stadiums are completely open to the sky. Others are covered by roofs that block most of the natural sunlight. Several were built primarily for American football and normally use artificial turf, so a natural football pitch had to be installed specifically for the tournament. Now the competition is entering its final stage. After more than a month of matches, rehearsals, running, sliding, sharp turns, and goalmouth battles, the most heavily used parts of each pitch have already taken considerable punishment. But when the semifinals and final begin, the surface cannot feel worn out. It still has to produce a reliable ball speed, a predictable bounce, and enough traction for players to accelerate and turn. So why could FIFA not simply install the same type of grass in every stadium? Why does a natural pitch still need thousands of synthetic fibers stitched beneath its surface? And how can fields spread across 3 countries, exposed to different weather and different levels of use, continue to behave almost the same beneath the players' feet? The answer began years before the opening match. FIFA worked with turf scientists to expose different pitch systems to heat, shade, hard stadium floors, and repeated use, allowing weaker designs to fail long before any of them reached the World Cup. The scale of the operation goes far beyond the 16 stadium pitches seen on television. Teams also need separate fields for training and match preparation, without repeatedly using the stadium surface. For this tournament, FIFA's pitch operation covers 16 official stadium fields and another 77 training and practice fields. That makes 93 playing surfaces that must be built, tested, and maintained across North America. The stadiums alone host 104 matches involving 48 teams, and FIFA's stated objective is for the ball to roll and bounce consistently from one venue to the next, despite major differences in temperature, altitude, rainfall, sunlight, and stadium architecture. What matters is the interaction between 3 moving objects: the ball, the player, and the surface. When a pass travels along the ground, the height, density, and moisture of the grass affect how quickly it loses speed. When the ball lands, the firmness and levelness of the root zone affect its bounce. When a player sprints and cuts sideways, the surface has to provide enough traction for the studs to grip, while still allowing the foot to release naturally. FIFA's pitch teams therefore watch much more than grass color. To work out how to do that, FIFA partnered with the University of Tennessee and Michigan State University on a 5-year research and development program. These universities were not chosen simply because they knew how to grow attractive grass. Their researchers had experience with the much harder problem of placing living turf inside large, multi-use stadiums. At the University of Tennessee, researchers built a specialized shade house that could reproduce the limited sunlight found inside a covered stadium. Grass could be placed under controlled shade and observed as it lost access to the light it normally needs to grow and repair itself. Michigan State University approached the problem from below. It installed a 23,000 square foot asphalt pad, roughly 2,100 square meters, to simulate the hard floor found beneath temporary stadium pitches. That allowed researchers to study what happens when natural grass is installed over a surface that was never designed to support a living football field. The difference is significant. Grass grown permanently in soil can extend its roots, exchange heat with the ground, and drain water through a deep soil profile. A temporary stadium pitch may sit above engineered panels, concrete, asphalt, or the venue's normal artificial surface. Its roots are restricted to a shallow construction layer, and heat can build beneath it instead of escaping into the earth. Researchers compared different grasses, root zone materials, installation systems, and maintenance methods. By the time the World Cup began, many unsuccessful combinations had already been exposed under shade, heat, hard flooring, and live event conditions. The failures occurred during testing, rather than during a World Cup match. Even after all that research, FIFA did not select one universal grass for every venue. The warmer locations use Bermuda grass, a warm season species suited to higher temperatures. Colder locations use a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass. These grasses grow differently, respond differently to heat, and produce different leaf structures. At first, using two types of grass appears to work against the goal of consistency. Giving every venue the same grass, however, would create a different problem. A variety that performs well in a warm southern climate may weaken in cooler conditions, while a cold season mixture may struggle in sustained heat. The solution was to standardize the result rather than every step of the process. In previous tournaments, grounds teams had often worked toward one common mowing height. The research for 2026 showed that the warm season and cold season grasses could produce similar playing characteristics at different cutting heights. One type might need to be cut slightly shorter, while another could be left slightly longer. The blades would not measure the same, but the ball could still travel across them at a similar pace. From a player's perspective, the number on the mower is irrelevant. The player feels the resistance under the ball and the grip under the boots. Two surfaces can be maintained differently and still produce a similar result. Once the grass varieties and pitch designs had been selected, an agricultural supply chain had to be built around the tournament. The natural grass used at the stadiums and training sites was planted between March and August 2025. Instead of growing everything in one location, turf farms were spread across the continent, reducing the distance between many farms and their assigned venues. That did not eliminate long journeys. According to FIFA's pitch management team, the longest trip from a turf farm to an installation site was about 2,250 kilometers. Transporting turf is not the same as transporting rolls of carpet. The grass remains alive after it is cut from the farm. Once sections of sod are stacked or rolled, the plants continue to respire and generate heat. Air circulation falls, moisture remains trapped inside, and the temperature within a load can rise. The longer it stays packed, the greater the risk of damaging the grass before it ever reaches the stadium. Cutting, loading, driving, unloading, and installation therefore have to follow a tightly controlled sequence. The turf must arrive healthy enough to survive the installation process and then recover before the first match. The pitch used at New York, New Jersey Stadium was grown at Carolina Green Turf Farm in North Carolina. It traveled several hundred kilometers by truck before being laid inside the stadium over 2 days. The visible grass arrived quickly, but the surface beneath it represented years of research and months of coordinated growing and transport. The delivered sod was only the top layer. Underneath it, some World Cup stadiums required an entirely new temporary field to be constructed. Houston provides one of the clearest examples. FIFA's pitch team did not gain access to the stadium until May 1st, leaving little more than a month to complete the installation. Workers began by laying down a geocell base, a honeycomb-like structure that helps spread loads and stabilize the temporary field. Irrigation pipes were placed above that base. Then, approximately 10 inches, or about 25 centimeters, of sand were added. This sand was not simply poured into the stadium and left in place. The entire surface had to be leveled precisely, and the irrigation system had to be tested before the grass could be installed. A football pitch appears almost completely flat, but water still has to move through it. If the root zone retains too much water, the surface becomes soft and unstable. If it drains too aggressively or dries unevenly, parts of the field can become harder than others. Small variations beneath the grass can later affect the ball's path or the way a player's studs enter the surface. Only after the base, irrigation, sand layer, leveling, and turf installation were complete could the next stage begin. Large machines then moved slowly across the new pitch, injecting synthetic fibers between 10 and 18 centimeters beneath the surface. This process is known as hybrid stitching. The fibers do not form a visible artificial carpet over the grass. Most of the surface remains natural. The synthetic material sits vertically within the root zone, where the roots and soil can form around it. The synthetic fibers help hold the root zone together. They increase durability, reduce movement between sections of sod, and help the field retain a more consistent structure as the tournament progresses. FIFA requires pitches at its senior tournaments to include this hybrid reinforcement because the fields have to survive elite football as well as ceremonies and rehearsals. At New York, New Jersey Stadium, the stitching process alone was expected to take 4 or 5 days. It was followed by top dressing, aeration, mowing, irrigation, and repeated adjustments as the pitch moved toward match condition. By this point, the pitch had already passed through scientific research, agricultural production, long-distance transport, structural construction, and mechanical reinforcement. Yet the project was still only halfway complete. As FIFA's pitch managers describe it, the first phase is building the field. The second is keeping alive. Keeping a temporary pitch alive inside a modern stadium can be harder than building it. Grass requires light, airflow, water, and a suitable temperature. A roof stadium can restrict several of these at once. Large stands cast permanent shadows. Enclosed architecture reduces natural airflow. Artificial cooling changes both temperature and moisture inside the building. Grounds teams use supplemental lighting systems where sunlight cannot reach the grass. Irrigation schedules are adjusted for each venue. Air movement, humidity, temperature, and the condition of the root zone are monitored rather than treated as fixed settings. There is no single watering schedule that can be copied from one city to another. The staff in a domed stadium may be trying to prevent excess moisture, while a field exposed to heat and direct sun may need to replace water much more frequently. Once again, different actions are used to produce a similar playing result. More than 650 groundskeeping professionals have been deployed across the 16 stadiums, with a similar number working at training sites. Their job continues throughout the tournament. During the matches, these teams are not simply waiting for the final whistle so they can mow the grass. They watch the game as a live test of the surface. They pay attention to the speed of the ball, the way it bounces, and the way players interact with the ground. When a player falls, they examine whether the cause was contact with an opponent or a loss of traction. If the ball changes direction after an unusual bounce, the replay can reveal where it happened. That information can be passed to the team at the venue immediately after the match. The affected area can then be inspected, repaired, aerated, watered, dried, cut, or reinforced before the next game. As the competition moves toward the semifinals and final, the surviving venues have to make their surfaces feel as stable as they did during the group stage. The grass may have been installed months earlier and used for several matches, but the player arriving for the final should not feel that history underfoot. The work is continuous. A pitch is measured, used, observed, repaired, and prepared again. The strange part is that the better this entire operation works, the less anyone notices it. Supporters remember goals, saves, tackles, and missed chances. They rarely remember that a long pass rolled at a predictable speed. For the pitch team, that lack of attention is the desired result. The 16 stadium fields and 77 training and practice fields are not identical. They use different grasses. They grow in different climates. Some are permanent football surfaces, while others were temporarily built inside stadiums designed for another sport. What FIFA is trying to standardize is the experience produced by those differences. Behind every apparently simple green field is a chain that begins in university research facilities, continues through turf farms and long-distance trucking, passes through irrigation pipes, engineered sand layers, and synthetic stitching, and ends with hundreds of people watching every bounce and every footstep. Thanks for watching. If this video changed the way you look at football pitches, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos about the hidden systems behind the things we see every day. See you in the next video.